body. It's unique. There's no other structure in the body that has the same functionality or characteristics that the heart muscle has. We say it's one of the strongest because it shows a lot of endurance. It beats from the time you are 6 weeks up to the time you exit this earth. That's how powerful it is. In our sleep, we don't instruct it. It's just the way God designed it. It will beat by itself and do its function as purposed. So it never sleeps, it never slumbers until your end of life. And when it's fully grown, it's actually the size of your fist. So if you do your fist, that is the size, that should be the normal size of your heart once it's fully grown. So like I said, this system consists of the heart, it consists of the blood vessels, and by blood vessels is the arteries. Arteries are those blood vessels that take blood from the heart to the rest of the body. And then we have the veins. The veins are the ones that take blood from the rest of the body back into the heart. And then we also have the blood itself. It is part of the vascular system. The blood is very, very important because if things are not right with the blood, it does affect the system. And by affect, it means, for example, if you lose blood, the body will compensate somehow, the system will compensate so that it continues to carry out its normal function. So like we are saying, when the heart beats, it's miraculous because it's got 4 chambers, but every beat, one beat takes all the blood that you need into the system, the arteries in particular, feeding the body, and then it has to come back again so that it goes back to the lungs for oxygenation, and then it goes again. So it's always that cycle, but we'll go into it. So the normal heartbeat for human beings differs per age. When you are younger, the heartbeat tends to be very fast. So when babies are born, the heartbeat is between 100 to 160 beats per minute. And as you grow older, the heartbeats slow down, and mainly because as you grow, the muscle gains strength. So one pump is enough to take the blood into the rest of the body and come back. And then also just to mention that for athletic people, okay, let me go through that. You see the toddlers, it's 90 to 140. Preschoolers, it's about 80 to 120. And then when up to 12 years old, it's closer to the adult one, which is 60 to 110. And then for the teenager, as well as the adults, it's 60 to 100 beats per minute, that is. So what I wanted to emphasize that when you are athletic, sometimes your heartbeat may be slightly less than 60, mainly because of the strength of the muscle. It's a muscle, so when you exercise, it gains strength, and so that one pump is enough to take nutrients to the body and back again. So don't be surprised. And obviously, if you're on medication, your heartbeat may slightly be different from what we've said. But for the normal adult at rest, that is the normal heartbeat. So like I said, the function of this system is to make sure that it takes blood from the heart into the rest of the body, to the different organs, to bring nutrients, to take oxygen, and then it brings back the metabolites now, which is after the body has used the nutrients, it takes it back, and then also it takes back carbon dioxide for cleaning in the lungs, and then it goes out again. So that is basically how the system works. And then every day, if you can count, if you could, the heart will pump up to 10,000 times, and it will pump the equivalent of 7,500 liters of blood in your sleep, whether you are during the day and even at night. So that is how the system, in summary, will work. So we'll just take you through a little bit of the visuals now. 2 sides. It's got 4 chambers, which are the arteries on top, the atria on top, and then the bottom part are the ventricles. It is situated in the chest cavity, protected by the ribs. It's on the left side, in the middle of the chest, and it skews a little bit to the left. That is why we have a beat here, which is called the apex beat. Most of you'll hear it, especially after exercising. The heart seems to beat more, and some people think the heart is on the left. It's actually in the middle, but it skews to the left a little bit. Very, very few people have one that skews to the right, but it's very, very few exceptionals. So also, in addition, the left side of the heart is the one that is responsible for oxygenation. So this is clean blood. After it's been cleaned by the lungs, it then gets pumped out into the rest of the body. Itself, the heart will only consume 5% of the blood. The rest is distributed to all the organs of the body. And then as it comes back, it comes through the right-hand side, which is the right atrium. It goes in and then goes to the lungs for oxygenation. Then it comes back to the left side. I hope it's a little bit clear. So this is this miraculous heart that God gave us. On top of that, it's got valves. So every time the heart pumps, it's very coordinated. When the top part of the heart, which are the atrium, squeeze, the ventricles are open so that they receive the blood. And then when the ventricles squeeze, the valves close, and then it sends blood out. So from there, the blue side will send them to the heart, because the blue means the blood has a lot of carbon dioxide, so it needs to go to the lungs for gaseous exchange, like dump the carbon dioxide, and then the lungs will clean it up and bring back oxygen, which is what we need. Then it goes through the rest, and then the heart will then distribute the rest. So I want us to take note of the fact that we've got valves as well that open and close as the heart is pumping. Then in a systematic way, this is basically what the important thing is, that the function of the heart is that it has to take the deoxygenated blood back to the lungs for cleaning and gaseous exchange. Like we said, it leaves the carbon dioxide, picks up oxygen, and then it comes back, and that is the oxygenated blood that our cells and our organs need, and that is the kind of blood that is projected out. Then it goes up to all the systems of the body. So with that network at the bottom there is what we call capillaries. So the arteries and the veins will break down into very, very small blood vessels, and that is what is used to feed the body, because every muscle, every organ boils down to being at cellular level. So once at cellular level, that is how the nutrients and the blood, so the nutrients and the oxygen are able to be used by the body. So basically, this is how, in simplified grammatic, the system works. Now, we need to help our heart to function optimally as human beings, basically. First of all, how do we support our heart to execute its function normally? First, we have to stop smoking. We've said avoid as well, because sometimes you are a passive smoker. So when you see a smoker, you just have to make sure you leave that space, because we have to avoid smoke as much as possible. Tobacco is one of the insults of this system. So we have to avoid it, even all tobacco products. Today we talk about this vaping. It's actually worse than the tobacco smoke that we already know. So to also support our heart, we need to be physically active. Physical activity, like I said, it really strengthens the heart muscle. When you exercise, like every other muscle, you strengthen it, so when it pumps the blood, it pumps it very, very, very efficiently. And that one is very important. Not only that, when you exercise, you actually create more capillaries in your body, so that when you have problems in future, and we'll talk about them, you find that the body has made extra capillaries for you, so you don't quickly suffer from some of the adverse events that may happen in life. We'll talk about it a little later. So it's one of the benefits. You strengthen your heart muscles, you also strengthen your blood vessels, but also you create collaterals or extra capillaries to continue to supply nutrients to the rest of your body. Healthy diet is very important. There's foods that support our heart health, and then there are foods that do not support our health, the health of our heart. And my brother will take us back, will take us more in detail into that. Also, maintaining a healthy weight is very important. If extra weight puts more strain on the heart, because now it means it has to pump extra to send out the blood, so that you get the right nutrients and and deliver the oxygen. So extra weight strains the heart, and we don't want to strain the heart, but we want it to work optimally. So this is when now we come to, hopefully we've brought our weight an hour height, so that you have an idea what your BMI is, because BMI is very important. It looks at what is your height against your weight. Previously, we just used to use weight, but then we realized that weight alone doesn't go well. It's better if you look at it against your height. Even this one is just an estimate, is a measure, just to give us a sense of where we are in terms of that. So if you have your weight and your height with you now, it's a good opportunity for you to calculate your BMI, and we've given you slips so that you just have a look of where it classifies you. And the way we calculate the BMI, you have to put your weight in kgs, and you divide it by your height in meters, not centimeters, in meters, and you square that. It will give you a number, and then there's a classification of where you are. Either you are underweight, there's a normal weight, you are overweight, or you are obese. So that is where we have to know where you are. And then there's another one that we use to estimate your risk to cardiac health. It's the hip-waist ratio, and it's different from men and women because we are structured differently. So for this one, the explanation behind it is that if you are somebody designed to store fat around the center part of your body, you are at higher risk of developing cardiac issues, mainly because that is what adds strain to the heart. So if your body is such that it's designed to deposit fats around the stomach and things like that, it means that is where your body stores excess fat, and you are at higher risk. But then there are some people who are pear-shaped, where the waist and the hip, the waist and the hip distribution is different. Women in particular, we tend to store our fat around the hips. It's an added advantage. It lowers our risk, because then it means that is where we store our excess fat, not around the stomach. So it's also one thing to bear in mind, so that you also try to manage your risk in that sense. And then, and this one, it has nothing to do with what you do as such. It's the way you are designed. It's just that when you now know, then it means you are in a better position to manage the risk. Blood pressure, also very important, and I hope we did measure it as well. Please have a look. There's a normal range, and then there's an abnormal range. Some people have low blood pressure. Some people have high blood pressure. High blood pressure is not good because, again, it adds strain to the heart. Usually it's because there's resistance that the heart experiences within the blood vessels. So as it is pumping, the blood vessels are either thickened, they lose a little bit of their elasticity, they become a little bit more hard, so that the heart, when it pumps, it has to pump extra hard to distribute the nutrients and the oxygen we spoke about. Unfortunately, when that happens, it can create micro tears inside the blood vessels. So as it's pumped, because the pressure is high, it can create micro tears, which again are a problem. We'll talk about them a little bit later. So keeping your blood pressure normal that is why it's actually important. So that we lessen the strain in the heart, but we support the heart system so that it does its work properly. Total cholesterol, also not good. There are two types of cholesterol. There's HDL, which is the good cholesterol, and you have to eat right to make sure you have good cholesterol. You have to exercise. That also helps elevate the good cholesterol. Then we have the bad cholesterol, which is the LDL. That one you get from the foods that we eat mostly. So again, we have to control our fat intake, and I think we will elaborate a little bit more on that. But cholesterol remains one of the problems that clog the arteries. So again, like we said, if you have a tube, which is our blood vessels, and you start having fat deposits in there, it means the heart has to pump extra hard just to distribute. Because the heart will always not compromise its function. It will always pump the blood at whatever cost. So if you have a clot, it will still pump, but now with more pressure, and just to overcome the resistance. It needs to circulate nutrients. And then Sugar is one of those things that we need to also control. It's not good for our bodies. It will be elaborated also a little bit later. And there's a lot of hidden sugars and hidden salts that we are eating. So it's one of those areas we need to focus on. Breathing clean air is one of those things that are important. And you'll realize that some of these things is stuff we know. The new start is the things that we know. But breathing fresh air helps us because remember, the heart and the lungs are also linked. If one goes wrong, the other system is affected. So if we must get used to breathing fresh air and then getting enough sleep, rest the body, decreases inflammation because the work that we do, the stresses that we expose ourselves to every day requires us to rest. And as we rest, we give the body a chance to recover and repair itself. So inflammation is one of the things that actually clog the blood vessels. And inflammation, again, is because of the food we eat, the pollution we expose ourselves to, the stresses we expose ourselves to. So it's one of those things we have to bear in mind, that the body does need time to rest and heal. If we keep it stressed, the heart gets stressed, and then it has to work over time. So even if we keep our heart healthy, unfortunately, things can and they do go wrong, right? So we have to know a little bit about the things that are likely to go wrong in the cardiovascular system. The first one is let me start by just highlighting that heart diseases, which is the cardiovascular diseases, are the leading causes of death globally. Almost 20 million of people die every year because of are affected by cardiovascular diseases. And unfortunately, these are premature deaths, which means people die before their age or their intended time to die, for instance. These are people who die before they turn 70, and we do know that life expectancy can actually go beyond that. So it's one of the areas that are a priority. It's what we call non-communicable diseases, and they do kill people. But let us go to some of the things that can go wrong to disrupt that system that we spoke about. Congenital malformations. We did say the heart is made in utero. It beats as early as 6 weeks. But unfortunately, as everything is coming together, some things can go wrong. So you get children who are born without well-formed hearts, for instance. So we saw that. I'm giving you an example. Some children don't have valves that close when they are supposed to close, open when they are supposed to open. So when the heart is closed, some of the valves are leaking. Sometimes it's the different, you remember we saw the heart has a left and a right side. Sometimes those septa are not formed very well so that the blood sometimes mixes instead of being separate. Oxygenated and deoxygenated blood must always be separate. But you find that something goes wrong, an insult goes wrong, or something goes wrong in utero, in the uterus, and the heart doesn't come out the way we have just displayed it. Infections also play a critical role. Sometimes you can get an infection of the heart, either the lining of the heart on the outside. We call it it's a pericarditis. The heart itself is the muscle, but it also has a cover outside. So sometimes you get infections in that cover, and that can cause symptoms and unfavorable outcomes. Then you also have rheumatic heart disease. This one is also common, especially in young children, unfortunately. They just get an infection, and it normally damages the valves, and then you find that the child is suffering or has to go through certain procedures to fix those valves that have been broken. So these things happen. Valvular heart disease, as I've mentioned, sometimes the older you get, the valves stop functioning the way they are supposed to function. Instead of closing, they are leaking or they are open and things like that. And those things have to be fixed because those are structural things. Then sometimes we have blood flow disruption. Deep vein thrombosis is one of them. We have a flyer for you around deep vein thrombosis. Deep vein thrombosis is when the clots form in the blood, especially on its way back, because these are veins. So veins is when the blood is now coming back to the heart to be cleaned again before it distributes. So sometimes you have that blood forms clots, and it can block those blood vessels. So you present with symptoms of pain and swelling and things like that. So that too can happen. Arrhythmia is when the heart doesn't beat the way it's supposed to beat. there's a disturbance, like we said, it's very coordinated the way the heart pumps blood in and takes it out, and left and right side and things like that. Sometimes you get something that goes wrong with that beat. So it basically loses its beat, and then it starts beating in an abnormal way. So those are arrhythmias. Unfortunately, those two can happen. And that is why you end up having pacemakers, for instance, because the heart has an internal pacemaker. So it knows when to beat, it knows when to open, it knows when to close, so that it functions normally. But sometimes that system, that circuit is disturbed, and then it starts beating, and it's not coordinated, and it causes problems and symptoms sometimes. Heart muscle disease also, the muscle itself can go wrong. It can weaken, and then therefore the blood, the pump, it no longer pumps as it is designed to pump. So heart muscle is also one of the common ones, and we see a lot of it. Sometimes it just dilates, and then it loses its ability to contract properly and close properly, and it leaves and sometimes the heart is enlarged or it's dilated and things like that. So that too can happen. Heart failure is another one, where the pump is not working as it is designed to pump. So you collect a lot of fluid because now it has lost its ability to pump and bring back blood as it's supposed to, for whatever reason. So those ones will present again with their own signs and symptoms, which we will discuss in the afternoon. But the pump itself can just fail, either because of the muscle not going right, or any other, or blood pressure or diabetes, or any of those common conditions can disrupt the heart so that it doesn't carry out its function as it is designed to. Then the last one is the common one, and where the lifestyle part can really help. It's the thickening or the narrowing or the blockage of heart vessels. So this one is the coronary heart disease, where now there's a blockage or a narrowing of the blood vessels, either because of fat deposits, either because there's a lot of inflammation happening, and then the body will try to fight or heal the inflammation, and therefore creating clots. And this is where we see heart attacks, we see strokes. And a stroke is either, it can be a blockage, or it can be the blood vessel rupturing. So those are some of the things that can happen again, because if the system is under pressure, like with high blood pressure, for instance, it can forcefully pump and rupture some blood vessels in the brain. That is called the stroke that we know. And then when there's a blockage, it's either a heart attack or it's also a stroke in the brain. I hope that one makes sense. And then, like we are saying, some things is not just about the blockage, but it's about an inflammatory process. Inflammation is when the body is trying to heal something that has gone wrong inside. So because of the small micro tears, when the blood pressure is high, the cholesterol is high, sugar is high, it damages the inner lining of the blood vessels, and that is when it can occlude or narrow those blood vessels. But like we said, with an occlusion or a narrowing, the heart will still pump, because that is what it's designed to do. So this is just an example of how the plaque forms, and usually plaques, these are the clots. They form over years. It's not an overnight thing. It's gradual. It can take years, depending on your lifestyle, actually. So the top one is the normal, where everything is flowing as designed, and then the clot starts to form, or the plaque starts to form, and those ones it's in the inside and the inner lining of the arteries. It can be due to cholesterol, it can be due to fat, and any other substance that the body keeps collecting to try and heal or close that area that is torn or things like that. So with time, it ends up occluding totally. So that is where the challenge is. So risk factors, now we have to better understand that why would I or you be the ones to get some of these cardiac things. So we have modifiable and non-modifiable factors. Some things we can do about and some things we can't do about. For example, age. We can't do anything about age. We are all growing. The blood vessels tend to thicken a little bit. They lose their elasticity as we grow older for all of us. So that we can't do anything about. So that is just the way things are designed. The blood vessels just lose their elasticity. They become a little bit more stiff, less flexible like they used to. So for men, usually it starts earlier. For women, it starts a little bit later. Then for females also, unfortunately, as our estrogen levels go down, which happens during menopause and also during pregnancy, you find that it does affect the elasticity of the blood vessels. We can't do anything, it's normal aging. Some races are at higher risk than others. Family history is one of the big ones, where if you have a history of blood pressure, you have a family history of blood pressure, of diabetes and things like that. Unfortunately, that you can't do anything about. The risk is already there. Ours is to manage the risk, like I was saying. It's not about we can't do anything. There is something you can do just to manage that risk. If you already know that this is something that runs in the family, there are things we can already start doing. The modifiable ones are even more, so there's a lot we can do to lower our risks or to manage our heart system or to work together with the heart system. High sugar, fats, and salt, which is the SOS that we already know, are a problem. We'll talk about it later. High blood pressure, we've spoken about. There's metabolic syndrome, which is the combination of type 2 diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, and coronary heart. Coronary heart is when the blood vessels are starting to narrow. So all of that together puts you at risk, but it's something we can manage. And then tobacco use, like we said, you can manage that. Alcohol use, that we can manage. Alcohol also tends to weaken the quality of the heart muscles. So some of those muscle diseases we spoke about, some of them are attributable to the use of alcohol. Physical inactivity, like I was saying, it's a muscle, so it needs to exercise. But let's exercise if you are allowed to exercise. There are people with conditions where you cannot strain your heart anymore. So get your doctors to talk to you about it. Stress, we've talked about. Environmental insults, urbanization is one of those. It's the pollution we spoke about. Urbanization comes with those disadvantages. We lose a lot of trees, oxygen quality goes down because of manufacturing and industry. And then also it changes our lifestyle because we no longer grow our own food. We have to buy everything now, and we don't know what happens during the growth process or during the processing when they process the food, unfortunately. So it's one of the things that are a disadvantage with the urbanization that we think is sometimes good. Okay, here are routine tests that we can do, and we took some of them outside, and the stations will be open for most of the day today, so feel free to go there. So blood pressure is something we can take for ourselves, and we will elaborate on it in the afternoon, what is normal and how you can take our blood pressures. Sugar levels, we can monitor that as well, even for ourselves at home and things like that. We'll elaborate in the afternoon. Lipid profile, which is the fat profile, it measures how much fat you eat in your diet on a daily basis. And that is where you also get the amount of cholesterol circulating in your bloodstream. And then you can also do an ECG, especially if you're over 40. We recommend that ECG is when we just want to see if your heart is functioning well. Basically, it's that electrical system I spoke about. After 40, things can change, so it's very good that you monitor how your heart functions after the age of 40. It's the ECG. And then, and that one is basic, and we should all be doing it, young and old, especially once you are even your early adults. For diagnosis, then they become more intense, more intentional. If you have signs and symptoms, then there are specific tests now that are more intentional. Stress tests, they want to see how much stress and strain your heart can take. Normal people, their heart is able to adapt to the stress. But when you have something wrong in the heart, you'll start experiencing signs and symptoms. So they need to test how much stress your heart can take. Chest X-ray, again, is also very important because it tells us the position of your heart and also the size of your heart. With the chest X-ray, you can estimate if your heart size is still normal or something is off a bit. And then also if there is cardiac failure, which is the heart failure we spoke about, and there's fluid accumulation, especially in the lungs, chest X-ray can tell you that. Echocardiogram is also very important when you have a focused imaging of the heart now. CT scan, equally an MRI, are those now really zooming into sophisticated tests that will really tell you what are the insults and what is actually going wrong. An angiogram is the one that would look into your blood vessels. Usually they inject dye and they just want to see if everything is open as it's supposed to be open. So that's an angiogram. And like I said, these ones are now specific to when you really want a final diagnosis. And then treatment is also very important. It's just a high-level lifestyle. It's one of the things we know very well as Adventist: diet, exercise, no tobacco, no alcohol. Medication will really help to treat some of the risk factors, like with cholesterol, you can get treatment to lower your cholesterol. And also sometimes you may be given treatment to dissolve the clots. So those clots also can be dissolved. So if you get the right treatment and you consult appropriately. Devices like the pacemaker, like I said, if your heart loses the rhythm, we can insert a pacemaker that will help your heart to know when to pump, when to relax, and so that it sends the blood. And then medical procedures is the stents. Stents is like when you put something to help dilate the blood vessels itself, because if they are so occluded, there can be stents that are inserted to help dilate the blood vessel. Valve surgery, you're repairing the valves if the valves are leaking. Coronary bypass is like if you bypass the blood vessels that are blocked so that the heart continues to function, or the organs that are in the body continue to function. So you basically bypass the clot so that you continue. So for me, this is where I end for this morning. Thank you, Brother Ren.
Good morning, everyone. Is it working? Morning. I was just about thinking in my mind right now that since I'm tackling kitchen cardiology, which is nutrition, I don't know to which church I'm preaching it to or telling it to, because this church is very healthy. You even have a garden in your own church. So I was just wondering, what more do I say to TESDA? Because when you walk in, you already see health. You already meet people with very healthy lifestyles. But I'm basically here to talk about the critical relationship between food and the heart, and the relationship between them. Because at the end of the day, as Doc mentioned earlier on, they do have a very critical relationship in terms of the strength and the longevity. So the first slide I've got here is called "Why Dish Up a Plate When You Can Just Dash It?" So the next time you get someone to dish for you at lunchtime, just ask them if they can dash acronym your plate, because that basically means a dietary approach to stopping hypertension, which is a very critical issue. Heart disease is built up on hypertension, high blood pressure, and that's basically what I'm talking about, is what goes into your plate and the effect that it might have on your heart and symptoms thereof. It's also known as the cardiac diet, and it aims to promote overall optimum heart health, ensuring that your daily food diet consists of the foods, which I'll show in the later slide, that prevent what we're talking about today, which is CVD, which is cardiovascular disease. One's food focus should be placed on increased intake of low-sodium foods. So these are also the reasons why food labeling and checking of the food labeling when you're buying food is very, very important. Because we may be looking at something that looks extremely healthy, but then on one end it has a high level of sodium. And then you're wondering, I'm eating this kind of food, but then I'm not losing any weight, nothing is going on, there's no change. But there's just one particular element which is not undertaken, as well as lean and unprocessed sources of protein, to mention a few. So, very important, and I hope it's all visible. High blood pressure is one of the key risk increasing conditions when it comes to cardiovascular disease. And what this is basically a medical condition that happens when the pressure of the blood in your arteries and your other blood vessels is too high. It was also mentioned in the previous presentation. And this is something that I know in South Africa alone we face a whole lot of. In fact, I believe that it's no longer called high blood pressure in SA, but no, it's called high. So if this wording might be confusing to you, it's high is what I'm talking about. And it's often called a very silent killer. And I've noticed this on personal levels, on friends, family, that when one has high blood pressure, it's something that you can even see in the behavior of how you eat your food, how you drink your juice, or, when you start drinking cranberry juice like it's water, then sometimes we might have an issue. So it's a silent killer. There are really no symptoms to find out. And the only way to know whether you have high blood pressure is to measure your blood pressure, which I believe is also happening at the vital signs outside. There are normal rates, and there are rates that you should now take concern of. You can lower your blood pressure with lifestyle changes, as mentioned, and some of them I'll mention visually later on. Now, the one point that Doc even said that I would stress on is blood cholesterol levels. You've got your two kinds of blood cholesterols, which I'm just moving down because of time, your LDLs and your HDL, which is high density lipoprotein and low density lipoprotein. In layman's terms, these are basically good and bad fats. So LDL is basically something that you don't want to have because, like earlier on, there was a presentation which discussed the plaque buildup in the bloodstream, in the arteries, and that's something that you don't want to have. So this is another part of the food labeling, which if you haven't already started checking, start checking so that you know that even though I'm picking up an item which I might think is quite healthy, it's actually the one that's downgrading a lot of the health part of it in my foods. And then your HDL is considered to be a good cholesterol because the higher levels provide protection against your heart disease. So cholesterol in its definition, because sometimes we might just think, cholesterol, fat, but it's basically a waxy fat-like substance that's made or by the liver or found in certain foods. Your liver makes enough for your body's needs, but we often get more cholesterol from the foods than we eat. So basically, from what I explained, and another simpler way I can explain it, is also sometimes in the food where you want to have 3 starches and then you want to have just 1 vegetable. The balance does not necessarily balance anyway. So that's how cholesterol can be built up, even if you think you're having a plate that looks pretty well. So these are some of the examples for food for your heart. As you can see, some of the foods that you might be familiar with, dried foods, which I think some of the kids might have a problem with dried foods when they start growing up, but eventually it becomes something that is a need. Cooking with olive oil or even canola oil could also help in terms of decreasing the fats. Fruits, berries, low fat meals and dairy products could also help in that. And then I've also put down the bad foods as well. Some things that we might look at as tasty and nice and have very quickly because of time. But because of time, this time on the heart can also lower down. So that's one thing that we have to be mindful for, that as quick as it is to get, it's also as quick as it is to kill you. When you think about it in fast food chains, at home we take good number of 15 minutes or 20 minutes to prepare fries or chips. And then when you order fries at a normal McDonald's, before you sit down, they've already called you back to come and collect it. I think that's cause for concern. So 6 common unhealthy eating habits that we have. I think some of us are guilty. I'm also guilty. I'm not going to say some of us and not include myself. But eating in front of the TV, eating when you're stressed, dining out, and this is what I was mentioning earlier in terms of time. So remember, the body digests food at certain times and digests it in a particular way. So if you're going to eat foods after 9, 10 at night, digestion is not going to fully take place, and that's also a problem. Grocery shopping while you're hungry. I don't know who's guilty of that, but I'm pretty sure I've gone to a grocery store very hungry, and gone to the bakery and put rolls inside a plastic, and by the time I get to the till, I'm scanning the plastic and no longer the rolls that are inside. So that's what eating while you're hungry means, basically eating before time. And yes, rewarding yourself with food. So basically what I just explained. Yeah. I put some examples as well of, choices that we make and the way we eat as well. I've also noticed that the way that we eat, the posture in which we eat, also affects digestion as well, also affects various parts of the body. And hence why sometimes if you're eating in a very slumber manner, by the time you wake up, you feel heavier, or by the time you stand up, you feel heavier than you should. And that's because if you don't eat with a posture that is correct, then you might have a problem with digestion, as previously explained. Now, also the very other important part is how much salt is too much salt. Apparently, a lot of people, when salt is not present, the food doesn't taste that well. And sometimes you might find yourself putting a whole lot more spice or salt than you should, simply because you can't just taste it as well. So when I was looking at some of these, I was also looking at the rates. I think it's a bit small, but it also shows grams in which, grams in which salt, it's a certain amount of salt that you put is recommended and what isn't recommended as well. Now, coming and bringing back home as well, the state of our own country's plate. South Africans adults eat twice the amount of recommended meat and starch in comparison to, and 3 times less vegetables than recommended. I think that's a very alarming rate. And 84% of South Africans eat meat almost every day, with poultry, red meat being one of the most popular. I've got a whole lot of friends where, as a vegetarian person myself, it shocks me when I look at other friends of mine who can have a plate of meat and nothing else. So it just shows our rates. Not saying that it's bad. Maybe for me, looking at them, I think that it's bad because I don't eat meat. But then again, this is the rates that are affecting our country. And remember, these foods that I'm discussing have a lot of amounts of fatty acids. Children that have a diet that is low in dietary diversity and have some plate composition as adults, which is likely to result in the establishment of poor eating habits and the risk of poor nutritional status early in life. So what this basically means to say is what we kind of start our kids with is also some things that they're going to keep pushing on as they grow older. But you want to give them a good head start, because this is all the foods that I've mentioned as well, the protein-rich, carbohydrate-rich. This is also brain food. This is development of, the anatomy structure of the body. And if these foods are not well practiced in a child's life, it may affect all those abilities, cognitive abilities, etc. Most commonly consumed vegetables in our country would be tomatoes, onions, cabbage, also followed by carrots as well. High blood pressure is a common health issue in South Africa as well when it comes to non-communicable diseases. So also what I learned with this, as well as also with all the years of study, is that there's a lot of foods that we can eat which increase the strength of our immune system, which helps to fight off certain diseases that we might encounter even without the help of a lot of medication. So with having a good diet, you also lessen your chances of getting too much treatment, because sometimes, obviously, too much of certain things might be bad for you. After family and friends, information from healthcare professionals remains people's main sources of nutritional information. So also with everything that I've mentioned and where I am so far, we also don't want to overwhelm our medical staff in the hospitals with certain small issues that can actually be controlled by you practicing a proper lifestyle and diet. The current composition consumed by many in South Africa does not align with the Eat Well plate composition. So this is a research study as well that has also been going on with regards to the recommended intake of food that is there, whether it be a chart that is in your own country or whether it might be something that is worldwide. And what we've noticed is that in most MEDC countries, or more economically developed countries, they have an intake, let's say it's 10% of ensuring that everyone has protein-rich foods. But most of these people end up eating over the recommended intake, which is then also not a good thing because, like I said, too much even of good might be too bad as well for you. And as I've said in the previous slide, when it comes to our local country here as well, we, in terms of most of the meal contents, so proteins, fats, carbohydrates, don't even reach the recommended intake. Sometimes we go way beyond, and in other places, far much less. I'll just skip over this slide because of time. So, how to combat cardiovascular disease, as we are talking about, and all other related diseases, if you can't exactly be a comrade. So what I mean by comrade is that a lot of people run. I see a lot of runners here as well. And when it comes to exercise, sometimes this is one of the best things to do. But if you can't exactly go and run for hours and hours on end, then you need to start with some of the common things that we have mentioned today. Basic and simple things like checking your BMI regularly, and use the adipose tissue X. So that's a quote unquote, so that we can basically cut down the fats on the body, on the waist, which I'll mention just later on. What is BMI, if you may ask? And that's body mass index. And as Doc explained earlier on, we use our height and our weight to find out whether a person is overweight or obese. And we also have the normal number, and also outside they should provide you as well with the normal, the less, and the overweight number as well. So these are things that are very important to check out, because also if you are thinking that you just look normal and everything is fine and you find out that you're actually overweight, you must remember that, as explained earlier on, your blood and pumping of the blood does twice its work. And you don't want that to happen, because now with all the strain in your body, makes you highly likely prone for cardiovascular disease. And the number that I've written there on the waist, and basically saying that all our waists can do better, is 40 inches for men, 35 inches, and there's also the centimeter amount as well. I won't further expound on that, just do the work. Centimeters for women will be 88.9 centimeters and 101.6 for men. Yeah. Those are normal rates. Those are normal rates, yes. Oh. Would you like me to repeat that again? For the waist will be 101.6 centimeters for men and 88.9 for women. Yeah. So let's just exercise, do the work, and keep that waist at that level. I also have some work to do on my own. Now, also very important is to afford yourself adequate hours of rest and sleep. Because if you don't get enough sleep, your risk of obesity, high blood pressure, depression, heart attacks are extremely high. Most adults need at least 7-8 hours of sleep each and every night. Children often need more, and you must make sure that you get enough rest. Set a sleep schedule and stick to it. And wake up at the same time each and every day, which basically means to have a routine. Keep your room dark and quiet if it's easier to sleep that way. Basically, give yourself the environment that you would be able to in order to make sure that you have enough rest. Speak to us. Speak to healthcare members, and if you need advice, if you're probably still tired throughout the day. Because nowadays, because of research and we know these things to be actual conditions, like sleep apnea, for example. It's something that you might be facing and you might not even know it. There is treatment for it. There are devices for it. There's basically everything that could be put in order for you to have a good night's rest. So based on the verse that is found in Matthew 11, 28 to 30, the summary of it and how I found it best with this quote is that God intends rest and not stress. Now, I found another acronym that was just what we're talking about, which is HEART, and which is something that you might keep to in order for you to continue being healthy and continue living a healthy lifestyle. Healthy eating, your fruits, your vegetables, your lean proteins, exercising regularly. It's very important to get movement, 30 minutes or more, as much as you can during the day, so that your body remains active. Because if your body just remains lay all day, you are also adding more risk to your heart. Avoid the risk factors: smoking, drinking of alcohol, and stress as well. Stress is something that's has been hitting on us of late, especially with work hours, school hours, the list goes on. So avoid stress. Regular checkups, very important. Your blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar levels, like what we are doing today. So get those checked, because you may be on the brim, you may not. Stay proactive as well with medications if need be, that you need to take it, so that you can also get back to a normal, healthy diet and lifestyle. Then do that. Replace bad habits with healthy choices. Instead of having an ice cream, because summer is on its way, and I know everyone probably wants to have an ice cream, take a walk with a friend. Have an apple on hand or something. I think that might be better. And then fast food, let's cut that out. The fast foods are probably the fastest killers that are there. All these things are processed. You sometimes ask yourself, how is this lettuce and tomato, lasting for so long? These are a lot of processed foods that are there. Let's decrease on that. And, instead, because I know it's a very family-oriented church, cook more with your spouse on healthier foods. And as I was told this morning from my elder, that I dress better, so I might be looking for a wife, as he said. So I think this will be something that I'll be doing now, cooking healthier food. Instead of a bag of chips, take a book and read, because to be honest, in that time, you might not really be that hungry. You might just need a book and a glass of water. Should do the trick. And worship the Lord your God, and his blessing will be on your food and water, and I will take sickness from among you. That's found in Exodus 23, verse 25. So I hope you've taken a lot from the kitchen cardiology section, that it's very important that what goes in our body has a very hectic effect on our hearts, and we should keep our hearts very, very healthy. Thank you.
Good morning again, Sabbath School members. We want to also welcome our online friends. Sometimes we forget to welcome them. And we do have our online friends that are always following us, and it's really good to have them with us all the time. Standing here, I really feel like one of the doctors, I have to say. And I'm inspired to do my other doctoral duties, but I won't do them today. I'll save you for another day. Just to thank you for these powerful messages. Dr. Ngageto, Heart 101, you touched on very important aspects that suggest that we have to do some change in what we do in our lives, and not postpone the change. Take it now, because the more you postpone it, the more damage we are doing and make. I know my grandmother always talk about hi. I always ask myself, what is this hi? Yeah, it's a very popular term. So no one wants to have a hi, so let's do the right thing. Archie, yeah, your things are a little bit touching. They're touching to the the core. But food is the worst enemy. I mean, we have to agree to that. And if we're not gonna change our plating, we are heading to the hi group. That's for sure. But thank you for these. We will continue to have really great messages touching around the aspect of the heart today. And I hope and wish that we can all take some important notes that are going to help us improve our lives. Our hearts are the major and the center of our bodies, and we need to make sure that it's in the right and good condition. Okay, just to go through our announcements, we have, okay, I need that book a little bit. Yes. Thank you. We have a very exciting new curriculum. Our Sabbath School Alive in Jesus curriculum for Sabbath School, which actually it has started rolling out because the beginner class is already using the new curriculum. So we are hoping that the rest of the classes are going to continue also having this. It's very exciting, colorful and bright pictures that are helping the children to learn better. And it's just improved from what we know. I've always didn't like the Sabbath School lessons with black and white pictures. You know, it doesn't give you that thing. So now the pictures will be nice and colorful and exciting for the children. We're looking forward to this. The lessons for quarter 4 has indeed been placed. Thank you, parents, for making sure that your children are empowered to learn in their respective ages. Thank you also to our treasury team for acting quick when we ask them to. Just to acknowledge those who celebrated their birthdays in the past week, our lovely Sabbath School friends. We had on the 11th, I hope she's here, Mrs. Mpepu, Musa Mpepu. Is she here? Where is she? She doesn't know the rules. I can't see Musa.